Carolina, Cindy, her Master of Science degree in nursing from East Carolina University. She also holds a certification in the care of adult medical and surgical patients. She is a wife, mother, and born again child of the Most High King.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Family Health Matters. I'm your host, Wendy Bridgers, and we are live in the studio today on Awesome Radio 106.9 FM on Family Health Matters. We're here every Thursday from 3 to 3:30, and we invite you to join us because we are talking about things, subjects, topics that are interesting to the health of our families because we do believe that the health of our families and ourselves matter. So today, it seems like it's been a while since I've been here. I've been out for a while, but I am live now back in the studio and so excited to be here on today. And we have a really super great topic that we'll be talking about today is called caregiver role strain. As everybody know that this is mental health awareness month for May, but I think this should be something that's always at our forefront because we have to think about our mental health and we have to think about how we plan and care for our loved ones as well. And so we have with me today in the studio my dear friend and colleague, Mrs. Earlie Barnes. And she is a registered nurse. She's an educator and a retired educator. Yay! And a clinician and a caregiver and just so many different roles. As you know, most people wear many hats and Early wears many hats as well. So we're going to be talking about the caregiver role strain on today. And welcome, Early.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here today.
Thank you for being here. So we're gonna jump right in a little bit, and one of the reasons why I invited Early to be with me on today because one of her wealth of knowledge and her being a clinician and an educator, but also the fact that she has shared in the role of a caregiver. She has provided care for not only many of us in the community, but also her sister. And so she comes with the testimony as well as experience. So she'll be able to share some of that with us on today. And hopefully through this program, today we'll be able to share some enlightenment, some encouragement, and some resources for people who are caregivers and people who know people that are caregivers. So I do believe that if we were to think about it, every one of us in the audience today could actually tell about somebody that you have actually provided care for, or somebody who does or serve in the role of a caregiver. And so if you want to join in on the conversation on today, please join us at 252-756-2008. That's 252-756-2008. And before we jump in, well, again, welcome Early. But when I was doing some research for this is what I found. And we're going to Early's going to give us a definition of a caregiver. But I wanted to just share this when I was just looking at this. It says, you are a caregiver if all of the following statements are true. Because sometimes we think it has to be like a formal something or somebody has actually told you that, but that's not true. So let me just read this to you. It says, at any time in the past year, this is saying that you are a caregiver if all of the following statements are true. At any time in the past year, you provided unpaid help or arranged help to a relative or friend with an illness or disability that left the person unable to do some things for him or herself, or who needed assistance due to getting older. Your caregiver if the kind of help involved assistance with household chores, finances, personal or medical needs. Your caregiver if the person who needed help lived in his or her own home, in your home, or another caregiver's home, or in another place, such as a nursing home that you provided care for. So I think we all probably could say true to all of those statements. So we all, in some form or fashion, are caregivers. So, Earlie, welcome again to Family Health Matters with us today. So just tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started, and then we'll jump right in with actually telling us a little bit about what the definition of a caregiver is.
All right. Thank you, Wendy. I'm so glad to be here today. Yes, I am a registered nurse. I've been a nurse over 42 years. I graduated from East Carolina University in 82 and started working at Pitt County Memorial Hospital. Then I went back later in my years and got a master's in administration and nursing. And then following that, I got a master's in education. And so I got a varied background, and I've cared for people in the hospital around. So expert clinician as well as educator and various roles like Wendy has said. So I'm honored to be here. Nurses are calling for me. I dearly love what I do, and so I like providing expert care to people. And I provided care to a lot of people, from delivering babies to taking care of them in the home or whatever. But I've been a well-rounded kind of nurse taking care of people. I love nursing, so I do believe it was a call, and I'm glad to be here today to share with you about caring for your family. It's very near and dear to my heart. And so as we get started on our last session that you will hear, probably that commitment and that thrill of mine, and I don't know how to call it a thrill, but just that compassionate care that you have to provide to that family and the things that are involved in caring for family. So I'm excited to talk about that today.
Awesome. And yes, I think if we took a poll, we would find out that you probably took care of a whole lot of our children and us as we move through this system. So Earlie, just give us a definition of what you would define and what you have seen in research that defines a caregiver.
Well, again, a caregiver is one, as Wendy's already given us those points, who cares for a member of your family, a friend. Take time to provide that care. There are different levels of care and caregiving. Some may provide just basic assistance with ADL, which is your activities of daily living, washing your face, just those things. Some may provide, household chores, go clean the house. Some may provide physical care, depending on your level of, expertise or skills. So you may provide in all levels of care, but if you take time out of your schedule to provide a consistent level of care to someone, you can be considered a caregiver. And as Wendy said, at the point when I can give that testimony, I can tell you I have been in that point, and it really, it's important to talk about it, because a lot of people are caregivers, and people don't know the magnitude and the intensity it takes to care for your family. We love our family, and we have to make massive changes sometimes in our lives to provide that care, but providing care to your family is so important. And it's just a friend, whoever you provide that care to, whenever you divide your time with those people, you are really a caregiver.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us. And as we look at the caregiver role, what are some of the challenges that challenges, and how you assess the needs in the process of getting ready or trying to make that decision of whether or not you're going to provide care or somebody needs care?
Yes. As Wendy and I were discussing this, I go back to my experience. I cared for my sister for a while, 3.5 years. I gave her care for her when she had her first sicknesses, and then her second sickness. I cared for her before her transition to the Lord. But when you are beginning to care for someone, it's not haphazardly. You just say, well, I'm just going to take you home and take care of you. You have to look at all the aspects of care. Who's going to provide the physical care? Financially, what does it take to you to provide that person at home? Even the respite care, meaning how do I get away sometime? What is going to happen to my life as I take care of that person? Who do I need to help me take care of that person? You may be just a family member. You may need some skilled people to come in. So if you have to do that, you have to decide, how much skill do I need? When do I need them? Do I need 24/7? I need 8 hours, 4 hours? So when you take on that role, you need to be very, very organized and meticulous about what's going to happen, because anything that falls through the system, it can affect you. And it can affect the care you provide, and it can affect you physically as well too. So it's not just, I'm gonna take them home. But before you take them home, you gotta make sure you have those things. And I say that so vividly, but I remember my sister, the first time I took care of her, and they brought her home on the ambulance, and they just dropped her off at the door. So like, okay, she's home now. And I got home that evening. I thought, oh my, she had a tracheostomy, which is she had a tube in her throat. She had a tube in her stomach. She couldn't talk, and she couldn't walk. And she was in the bed. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, they just dropped her off, and they thought, I'm the nurse, you're RN, but just being RN is not enough. I didn't have the resources. I was working a full-time job, and I was like, oh, how am I going to care for her? And so it took a lot. And I even called the doctor and said, y'all didn't take her back to the hospital. I can't care for her. But, such as the system is, she said, well, we'll send someone out and we'll do this. And I was like, well, sending someone out is different than you being there every day. And I started taking care of her. I lived in Greenville, and she lived in Rocky Mount. And I finally really had to give my house up. I packed everything up, moved everything to storage, and I moved in with her. And that was just a time God had provided me a time that I could do that. You can't do that always.
Absolutely.
But I was in a point that I could just pack up. My children had gone off to college and stuff, so I was home alone. So I said, I can do that. But it took a lot out of me to be able to move in with her and take care of her on a regular basis. So before you make that point, I know no one wants their family in a nursing home. No one wants their family to go. But before you do that, you make sure you have all the resources you need to do what you got to do, because you get home and you don't have that. They don't want to take you back, and it's hard to get back in the system.
As you were talking, I was thinking that that is a lot for one person to take on themselves. So I'm thinking that in my mind that one of the things that we could provide now to share with the audience is that maybe in looking at when you find yourself in that situation is maybe having a family meeting before you make that decision to be that primary caregiver. Because it shouldn't, well, I won't say shouldn't, but sometimes you want to make sure that you're not the one that's taking on the load. So sometimes you, in your assessment of looking at things, maybe, having that family meeting and calling not only just immediate, because there may be just a person that's, you were the only sister. I know you had brothers, but, there's something about that girl that's sort of, that sister love. But sometimes we can even extend it to the cousins and the nieces and the grandchildren. So having that family meeting and putting in place a plan. So that everything, won't fall on just one person. And where you talked about looking at what resources that you would need. So maybe asking some questions, what type of help, will we need? What kind of you mentioned your sister had a feeding tube. So, that involves some additional resources. How many hours a day are we going to be able to plan? Will I do 10 hours? Can you do 10 hours? So I think that we were talking about mental health, and to keep from putting all the stress on yourself, having that family meeting and listening to what people have to say in that process of, doing the family meeting. And when, you were talking and you said that everybody, you made the comment that, nobody wants their family members to go to a nursing home or what. We have to also think about what that person's wishes are, that person who's needing the care. You have to examine their wishes. And I think I like what you said, you got to consider, but then too, it's all right to say no if you cannot do that.
That's right. And as Wendy was saying, she's that word assesses. We're nurses, so assess is one of our first words that we use.
That's right. Assessment. You got to make an assessment.
Just identifying and looking at what's going on. And so when my sister came home, it was either you're the nurse, and I had like I said, she said I had my brothers, and they had their family. They said, we'll come visit. Okay, and she made such a great point, having that family meeting, because coming to visit is one thing, but coming to care is another. You can come your regular visit for, okay, I'm coming to visit 30 minutes. I'm ready to go. We got something to do. But caring for that person, giving that person relief. When I wanted to go back to my church, my church is in Washington, and she lived in Rocky Mount. I couldn't go on Sundays. I couldn't do those. I had to give her some social life. So I gave up things that I had to do to care for her, but was anyone else doing that? So when you had that family meeting, you need to say, what can you do? Oh, I'm in with you. But then when you get there, they said, well, I'll see you in a month. I'll see you next week. Wait a minute. I'm here every day. So that assessment is so important. What are some tensions? Is there any tension in relationships? What level of health do you need? Mood, anxiety. What's going on in that family dynamics? Because you can have a very dysfunctional family, and that will really cause a lot of problems. And I know as a caregiver, we come up caregiver role strain today. You can become physically ill yourself. You can be mentally incapacitated. So many things can happen to you as a caregiver if you're overwhelmed and don't have the support. So that was really good what she was saying, that family meeting. Let's talk about it now before mom or dad or whoever comes home. Who's going to be there? Who's going to be on the weekend? Who's going to give me a relief? Can I take a vacation? Can I go off? Everybody else is doing their thing, but they forget I'm there taking care of that person. So that is really important. Assessing what's going on, what's the dynamics of the family. It's very important in family caregiving, is looking at dynamics of the family.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because once you're in that role as far as a caregiver, when you mention, not just the dynamics, but what's happening to you.
Exactly.
When you're, as the caregiver, are you starting to, some challenges that, you can start feeling is like isolation, feeling like you mentioned, am I in this all by myself? And I think sometimes we do, as caregivers, think about the fact that it just seems like nobody is here. But then you had to ask yourself the question, have you asked anybody?
Exactly. That's right.
Have you asked for help? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. And Wendy mentioned earlier, there are two words I had written down. It was no and ask. So what does no mean? No means that you're not going to participate, but no means that sometimes you may have to say, no, I cannot. When we have good intentions sometimes wanting to do, but if you know your situation such you can't, don't get involved like that. Don't say, well, I can be there Monday through Friday, every Monday or every month, and then you get there, you can't do it because your job is not such, or your situation not you can do that. So be careful that you assess your situation before you accept that responsibility, and then ask for help. And I know I'm a person that likes to do a lot of things myself. So my sister-in-law, I use Barbara. She a lot of times said, Earlie, I can do some things. Let me do. Ask me for help, and I feel like I can do it all, but I would get off work and try to run to the grocery store, do that. But she's just asking, I can come in and do those things while you're at work. And I feel like that helped a lot when you start asking for help and reaching out. Don't assume no one wants to help, but they don't know if you don't let them know.
Absolutely.
So no is a good word. If you can't do it, it's not going to be, if they look on you frowningly, but that's okay, but you can't do it. You're truthful, and then ask for help.
Yeah, and that's very good, because if you say yes, I'll do it, it's the expectation that it's going to be done.
Right.
And you don't want to be the one that's saying yes and then you not show up.
That's right.
Time is planned so that, okay, Earlie's going to cover this, Wendy's going to cover this time, and then when it rolls around, Wendy's not there. So Earlie's hours are extended and then it goes back to that tension that you were talking about, not that I don't want to do it, but now you're saying that you're going to be there to help me. And then there's a tension between us.
Exactly.
And then that tension builds, and then there's stress. And not only does that tension build between us, but it may start to affect the care that you're providing.
Exactly.
So I think that goes back to communication, making sure that you're communicating not only just with yourself in the team, but you're communicating even with the person that you're providing the care for. You have to ask them to, what are some of the things that they need. So now that we talked a little bit about isolation, meaning, challenges that a caregiver can face is isolation, feeling like you're the only one. And we often do feel like you made the comment that you're the person that likes to do everything, that I feel like I can do it. And yeah, you probably could, but allowing somebody else to step in to help you will help reduce that stress.
Right. And I found out that really was an impact on me, my life, when I didn't allow other people to do. And like I said, so many times, so I have to, not only assess like what I can do, my skills, my spiritual well-being. I was, neglecting that. So as a caregiver, we're talking about caregiver role training, that you have to set aside time for you. Look at what you're doing. We call it respite care. RESPITE, but I call it respect, but it's respite care where you respect that person that's taking care of that caregiver, but know they need some time.
Right.
So can I have time to go with my friends? Can I have time to go to church? If that's very important to me, I couldn't go because I was in another town. I need some relaxation time. Early, I know that you've been here with your sister all week. We're going to come the weekend. You go off. If it's only going home and put your feet up and rest and not, whatever, but you have to set aside some personal time, carve out that time for you, because if you don't, it will eventually affect you. So we have to really be, again, I think she said that we're preparation, prepare, know what's going to assess. And so you can, that caregiver can have some time too, because that caregiver is very important. Because if the caregiver break down, if I get sick, like my sister say, if you get sick, then who's gonna really take care of it?
That's right. That's
so
right.
we need you. We need your mind. We need you to be here to help direct what's going on. Because they look at the nurses like we know everything, but they needed that support from me. And I appreciate my family respecting me in that role, but I need to be able to step back and ask for some help.
Absolutely. And sometimes we have to carve out time.
Yes.
I think you mentioned that a little bit, that even if we are there, being that caregiver for a long period of time, but we need to carve out time that we can step away, even if it's like 15 minutes to go and sit, take some deep breaths, relax, because you may not actually be able to go away because there may not be relief for you for somebody else to come in, but you need to carve out that time where you can say, I need to take 15 minutes, make sure the person is safe, they're taken care of, and then take your 15 minutes and not feel guilty about taking that time, making sure that you're managing what you eat, because sometimes we can get so caught up in making sure that that person that you're caring for is eating well and getting what they need, and then you just grab something really quickly. So that's all part of taking care of yourself as well. And also, even social, you mentioned that about your spiritual well-being, about going to church. We have to figure out ways that we can, because that's important to you. And so you have to figure out ways that you can get that as well, doing things online now, that, doing Facebook, doing those things, but we still have to make sure that we carve out that time.
And then that spiritual well-being is like, how do you cope
Mm-hmm.
with life's changing, life situations? Everybody cope differently. Some, they sing a song, some, need other people, some don't. So you have to, again, that's back in that identifying in the beginning. How do you cope with the change? And so in that spiritual being, what do I do? What can I give up? What can I not give up? And like you said, now, we have more avenues, because I feel a lot of people online, but that point in time, that they were not online back in 2012, 2013.
Right.
It was not that you had to go to church. You didn't have that, that online. So I had to, carve out that time, read my Bible, read a book, whatever, to kind of make time to stay spiritual, because it was really very, very hard. But as a caregiver, one other thing I want to say is that sensitivity. We're not saying that not to take care of your family. We know it's very sensitive. It's very sensitive when I say, I'm not going to do that, or you shouldn't do that, because that's your decision. But what we're saying is that within that sensitivity, we got to really look at our whole surroundings, our environment, and not just jump into it and say yes when you really can't. Because that's a detriment to that person, that client, that your family. If you say yes, I can do it, and they come home and you cannot do it,
right?
Then not only that you took on a role that you couldn't provide, but also that family members is going to be affected too. So we're not saying, and everybody make that decision what you need to do, because that's your mom, that's your sister, what you got to do. But just be careful when you say yes, because when you want that sensitivity there, and you got to be very sensitive with people and what they're going through, and how they're going to handle it. So just I wanted to say that, because it's very sensitive when you talk about your family.
Absolutely.
And when I say that, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Well, you not me. But that's since right. I am, how can you support me? How can you help me? Instead of being negative, I'm trying to do it. What can you do to support me and then help me through that? So
absolutely, that is true, because sometimes people stand back and look in. They don't see what's already there, and what connections that you made with your family member. And then too, I was thinking on that, you were saying about you have to decide the sensitivity piece of deciding whether to say yes or no, but to realize too that if you do say yes and you start the process and then you become overwhelmed, that it's okay to step back and say, okay, we may need some assistance here, or either the person that you're caring for is starting to maybe need a little bit more care than what you initially started off with. So you may need some additional resources, or the person may end up needing more than you can provide. And and I think it was good what you said, that it becomes detrimental to that person if you don't recognize it and say it. Because if you're trying to, do complete care and you're turning somebody, and it gets to a point that you cannot, because they become more dependent on you and you can do it, and people are thinking that you're doing it, and then the client may, or your family member may end up with more harm. And nobody, like you said, nobody wants to put a family in a nursing home, but it depends on what your situation is. I think you have to evaluate. And so you don't just say yes and never go back and reevaluate. Right. So we're saying out here to our audience today is that it's okay to say yes and it's okay to say no. But if you say yes and you find later on that this is more than you can bear and you don't have the resources, then it's okay to step back and say, we need some help. We need to come back to that family meeting and reevaluate what's going on. Yeah. So talk a little bit really quickly maybe about some resources.
Right. Yeah. So again, as you have assessed your situation and you have your family there and you're taking care of them, what are some resources that you can reach out to? And those are things you need to talk about before you leave the hospital. How you're going to get the supplies, who's going to come to the house, how often they're going to come to the house. If they need meals and you can't provide Meals on Wheels, support groups, housekeeper you can come in. Can some people come in and help clean? A lot in the church. Sometimes we have people have different, things in the church, and they may say, well, we can come in and clean your house Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We can do this. So again, like she said, have that outline or have that piece of paper and write it down. We always say if it's not written, it's not done.
That's right. That's the nursing part.
Right. But when you write it down, you can see the vision. You can see where you're going with it. And you can see what's going on. So you write down who's supposed to come today. And then you might say, oh, there's a gap there. But then if you don't have it, but so be it. So I know I can count Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I got Meals on Wheels. So I know I need to cook Tuesday and Thursday. Well, I know I got this help, blah, blah, blah. And on the weekend, I don't have this. So you can adjust your life and look at. So there are a lot. We couldn't even begin today, but there are a lot of community resources you can reach out to. And definitely before you leave the institution, the hospital, whatever, make sure you've tapped into your social worker, your community person, your discharge planner to help make sure you have what you need, and then go from there. But you tap into your church, your friends. I mean, whatever. Sometimes it's what they say, take a community, a village to raise the children. You take a village to care for your people as well. Sometimes it takes more because you don't have it, particularly if you're only child. To think about, or you don't, it's your parent or whatever, and you work every day. You need some resources, and so Absolutely. Don't go it alone. Get out, ask for help, seek some community resources outside the home that can come in and help you.
Absolutely. You can't go it alone. It's a journey. And that goes back to having when you lay out the plan. And I like what you said earlier about writing it down, because if something happens to you, somebody else will have that plan. Exactly. And somebody else can just jump right in and sort of take it and go with it. Because if you don't have it written, then you can't share it. So most of the time it's very easy to share if you have it actually written down. Well, I know this has been a great conversation, and time has flown by. It is time. So Earlie, thank you so much for sharing with us on today. And thank you all for watching and listening. But I am Wendy Bridges. I'm your host. We are here every Thursday on Awesome Radio 106.9 FM on Family Health Matters. Please join us from 3 to 3:30. And we look forward to seeing you next week, where we would be discussing another wonderful topic. So again, thank you for joining us. And Earlie, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
And thank you for our Facebook and radio listeners for listening to us on Awesome Radio 106.9 FM on Family Health Matters. Again, I'm your host.
This is Ruth W. Council, and I listen religiously to WBIS Awesome Radio 106.9 FM. Partial funding for this program is brought to you by Blessed Hands Car Wash and Detail Plus, 2016 Chestnut.